out who it is that we want to apply and select. And so here is where I'm just going to introduce quickly and let you read through the QLIC material because it's very good there. But notice that we first of all want to think about and set what specifications would be appropriate for the job. What kinds of technical and interpersonal skills would be appropriate? What kinds of training, education, experience, maybe the attitude and network would be appropriate for this job? And how do we figure this out becomes the next question. How do we figure out what kinds of skills we need? How do we figure out what kind of training? We conduct a job analysis. And again, QLIC has some good description of the job analysis. The job analysis, we might interview some current employees and find out what kinds of things they're doing. We might use a questionnaire and send it out to many employees and get some information that way. We might observe. You know, let's say that Alex is on his way out on a sales mission and I'm the sales manager. Maybe I say, Alex, could I follow you along for the day and see what you're doing? You see? Now we kind of laugh about that, but how else will me as sales manager know what's going on? I need to have some hands-on perspective probably, and so that can be very helpful to do that. So if Alex thinks I'm going along to be a policeman, he probably will feel very nervous. But if he knows that I'm going along to learn from him about his job, maybe he will welcome that kind of participation. And so that's another way that I could learn from it. Or I might even ask Alex, please write down for 1 week all of the things that you're doing during the daytime. Maybe as you take on a new task, write it down so that by the end of the week I can get a sense of the kinds of things he's doing and the kinds of skills he's using. I may find out that our current job description that maybe I made 5 years ago is totally outdated. You see, maybe I was the sales person 10 years ago. Is it possible the job has changed since I was in that position? So how do I make sure that my job description, what I'm using to attract the new people, is going to be up to date and relevant for the current needs of the organization? So out of all of that information, and again, you can look at it in more detail in the QLIC book. We could spend an entire class talking about each of these topics, but because of time, let's just say that the job description that we create probably has something like these kinds of items on it. And here's what we post so that when Jim is looking for the possible job, he will get a sense of whether this is a job that would be of interest to him. Is it a job that he's qualified for? We might put the title and a summary of the job, but also what kinds of relationships there are. Who does it report to? What people are reporting to it? What other people are they collaborating with? What are the basic responsibilities and duties? What are the authorities? Standards of performance. See, all of these become kind of the elements of the job description, again described by QLIC very well. What are the working conditions? What's the physical environment like, if that's relevant to the description? How much travel is required? Sometimes is put into a job description. And so we might also think, so you can look, as I say, more at QLIC about that, but we can also then kind of talk about some strategic hiring choices, questions that we might need to answer. Will we hire from outside or will we hire from within? What are the pros and cons of that? If we have a good, strong number of people that we've been preparing, we've been following Freddie's concept and developing the people in advance. Maybe we have some strong candidates within, and our objective is to hire as many people as possible from within to promote. That's actually a very strong strategy as long as we are providing the training and development opportunities so that we are preparing the people for those higher level jobs. If we do that, that becomes a nice reward for them when we offer them that promotion, right? That can be part of the reward system. It's also possibly a way to reinforce a strong culture, corporate culture. It turns out that companies that have strong corporate cultures usually prefer to promote from within because this is the way that they can continue to reinforce the strong corporate culture that they have. So if you work for a company that takes the corporate culture seriously, promotion from within is likely to be something that is valued as well. Now, of course, there is also some advantages to hiring from outside. Why would you want to hire from outside? What's that, Leo? It's quick. It might be quick. What else? A different viewpoint, so new ideas. It turns out that hiring from within may get people who are already kind of thinking like the company is thinking. But if you want to develop a stronger new idea of some kind, maybe you need some, what they say, new blood. Bring in some new blood. I think this just died. Yeah, it's dying. We're on red. I'll switch you over to the other one. But I think the other one may have already died, so we'll see. If not, I think I can talk loudly enough for everybody. Well, I'll do my best. So, the hiring from outside, maybe we don't have the qualified people internally. That's one reason. Maybe we are looking for some new ideas or new blood. If at the very top of the organization you want a CEO who will keep on keeping on the good work of the company, maybe you promote from within. If you're hoping to really do a strategic change and take the company off in a new direction, oftentimes you hire a CEO from outside. Maybe you even hire a CEO from a different industry. An example is Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company was doing okay, but they said we really need some people, someone with new ideas and so they replaced their CEO at about maybe 5 or 10 years ago with a guy named Robert Mullally, who they hired from Boeing. So they took a guy who knew something about building airplanes and brought him over to try to build cars. And a lot of the people inside Ford were not happy about this. They said, why should we follow someone who knows how to build airplanes? What does he know about cars? And so they were even a little bit patronizing with him. They said, Robert Mullally, this is a very complicated process, building cars. There are thousands of parts in a car. We'll help you learn. And Robert Mullally said, let me tell you about a complicated product. It's called a Boeing 747. It has millions of pieces. I think I know a little bit about complexity. I need to learn about Ford from you guys, but I've got a lot that I can bring too. And so he actually turned the company around, and most people would give him credit for the much greater success that Ford has had in recent years. So sometimes that outside perspective is very, very valuable. Another thing he did was, you may have heard of the Ford 150 pickup truck, F-150 pickup truck. It's a kind of a light truck.
Yes.
And historically, almost all the cars in the United States are made out of steel. And Mullally is the one that said, now we will make the Ford 150 pickup truck out of aluminum. The body is out of aluminum. And a lot of people were saying, is that going to be safe? He says, sure, we do it in our 747s all the time. So he brought his knowledge of materials that were being used for very high-tech aircraft and applied some of that knowledge in the context of the car. So you see, sometimes the outside knowledge is very, very useful. Do we select for skills or attitude?
Both.
I think both is a very good answer, but sometimes we have to give emphasis on one or the other. And the habit of many managers is to give emphasis to the skills. And sometimes that's a big mistake, because sometimes you have a very well-skilled person who's not a very good person on the team.
Yes.
Or does not fit with the corporate culture very well. And increasingly that becomes important too. Southwest Airlines has a saying. Southwest Airlines, the company I've been talking a little bit about, they say, hire for attitude, train for skills. So they're saying both are important, but if we have to get one and train for the other, we can't train attitude. Now, your mom trained you with your attitude. And so we will hire for attitude, train for skills. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't care whether you know how to fly an airplane or not. You obviously, they are looking for the basic capabilities that are there, but once they've got the basic capabilities, they will differentiate on the basis of the attitude that fits in with the culture of the company. Are we going to attract through pay, or are we going to attract through a package? In other words, the package would be pay plus. Pay, what are the other things? Pay plus training, pay plus experience, pay plus Or is it just pay? I mean, if we decide pay, then we have to keep paying the highest because that's what will keep the people there. As soon as there's someone else who pays higher, off they go somewhere else. Most companies have learned that that's a bad strategy, that the pay plus is the way to go. Pay for, attract people with an entire package. Be able to talk to Helen and say, Helen, here's why you should come work for us. We say we have a good salary, but that's just the beginning of it. This is dying. Okay. So we think about that. Now let's talk about hiring for the job or hiring for the career. That's another thing. Because the manager, particularly when this seat over here is open, what are we tempted to do? Do we hire for the job or hire for the career? Probably the job. We say, we need to get this job done, we need to find somebody. Yeah. You know, whereas if we're thinking longer term and developing a plan in advance, we can begin thinking about hiring for the career. And then if we're hiring for the career, more likely we'll be able to promote from within. Right? You see how it kind of all fits together? And again, remember the wheels that we were talking about. We want those wheels in alignment. So if we're saying we're going to hire from within, we better also hire for career, right? If on the other hand we say we're going to hire for the job, then maybe we better be prepared that we're going to be hiring more people from outside if we're going to keep it consistent over time. So here's a few examples of hiring for fit. We have David Weekley. David Weekley is a housing company. They build housing in the United States. Look what he says. While experience and skills are important to consider, we look for candidates with the right cultural fit for our company. So the number one criteria, cultural fit. If they need generally qualified people, experience and skills are important, but number one is the fit. Here's another one. Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks. We only hire people who smile because they want the baristas, right? Yeah. Do they want grumpy baristas that are always going to be mean to the customers? Very dangerous because their whole brand is excellent service, right? And so they say we only hire people that smile. Someone asked him one time, in fact, I think it's in the Zappos case, the quote. Someone asked him, how do you get all your people to smile? They're amazed. Wherever I go, I find smiling Starbucks people. How do you train them to do that? That's his answer. We only hire people who smile. So in other words, they don't have to train. If they do a good job hiring, it makes their job training and managing much easier, right? So as a leader or manager trying to hire your new employees, to take the time to get the right people actually makes a big difference. It makes your life easier. Okay, here's another one. This is the one I just told you about, Southwest Airlines. Hire for attitude, train for skills. So here is attitude. By the way, how do you measure attitude? When we're talking about skills, we can say, do you know how to fly an airplane? And you say yes, and we say prove it. And we put him up in an airplane, and he flies around, and we say, okay, he's got the flying skills. Plus, we can see his record. He has flown 3,000 hours for Shaman Airways, so he's got a lot of experience. We can measure the skills, right? How do we measure attitude? We have this attitude machine. Go. Let's see. 3.5, not so good. Does it work that way? No, it's not that easy. And so Southwest Airlines has said, here's how we define attitude. A warrior spirit. And then they don't just say warrior spirit, they actually say the desire to excel, active courage, persevere, and innovate. See, now can you interview people and kind of talk about their history and begin to get a sense of whether that is applicable? Good. Servant's heart, ability to put others first, treat everyone with respect, proactively serve customers. Could we get a sense of whether they've done that in the past and whether that's what they're interested in doing if they get hired? Probably. Could we look at the fun-loving attitude, passion, joy, and an aversion for taking oneself too seriously? So how do we figure that all out? That becomes the challenge. But notice this is a very more detail than just saying we're hiring for attitude. Now we actually have some behavioral indicators that we're looking for. And then what does Southwest do next? They say, okay, maybe they've got 30 people that they're interviewing. So the people go through their interviews, and then they bring them into a room like this. And they say, okay, you've got 15 minutes to prepare to give a 5-minute presentation to the group. And so everybody goes, oh, presentation to the group. And so they're preparing. They say, whatever topic you want, your choice. And so they're all preparing for their presentations. And then it's time, and one by one, they come up and give their presentations to the group. Okay? Now, in the meantime, in the back of the room, there are some judges from Southwest Airlines, human resource judges who are, or maybe line workers, other people. Anyway, the people who are responsible for evaluating what's going on. What do you think they're looking for? What do you think they would be, how will they find the people that have the attitude they're hoping for? What do you think what do you think they will evaluate? Patrick?
I think evaluation is maybe score the participants by their behavior, whether it's good or bad. Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of behavior would you'd be looking for?
According to different competency,
okay,
or different, just like different spirit the company would like.
Okay. Yeah. So what would be an indicator of that? We need to get very specific, not so general.
I think different company have different indicator.
Okay, so but I mean, in Southwest Airlines, you've seen this is what they're kind of looking for. Now they've got the people coming down to give the presentations. So how will they tell whether one of the candidates has the attitude, the right attitude, or not?
So according to Southwest, I think we should observe their maybe passion.
Okay.
Or maybe treat everyone with respect.
Okay.
During their behavior.
Okay.
According to their behavior.
All right. Any other thoughts on that? Delia?
Maybe they can give them some challenge for the presentation and just to observe their reaction to be nice behavior or angry or something.
Okay, so that's good. So during the presentation, they're giving some kind of challenge, and in real time, I've got to figure out how am I going to respond to this thing that happened or whatever. Okay, interesting idea. Here's what actually they do. They don't pay any attention. Oh, thank you so much. They don't pay any attention to the presenter in the front of the room. They don't care about the presentation. They're up in the back of the room watching the audience. So let's say that we have one of the audience members, Patrick here, he's busy getting ready for his presentation, taking the last minute or two just to get ready and do very good. So how do we think about that as the attitude? Thumbs down. He's not paying attention to the presenter up there, right? Meanwhile, another member of the audience is going, oh yeah, good point, nice job. And this is actually his competitor because everybody is trying for the job, right? But here's someone who's going, yeah, excellent, keep up the good work, and nodding and paying attention. Yes, he's got the attitude, you see? So actually, they're looking at the audience behavior to see how team-oriented these people are. And as a matter of fact, Southwest Airlines was sued by some of their employees because they said, we were more qualified and you didn't hire us. We deserve to be hired, so you discriminated against us. And so there was a lawsuit. And it was actually pilots. These 3 pilots had come in, and 2 of them had more experience. They were all qualified. They had many thousand hours of experience. But let's say that 2 people had 8,000 hours of flight. Another one had 7,000 hours of flight. But Southwest Airlines hired the guy that had 4,000 hours of flight experience. They said, you discriminated against us because we should have been hired with our flight experience. Most airlines would agree with that. The most hours, the most experience. But Southwest Airlines said the threshold is whatever it is. Let's just say 3,000 hours. Anybody that's over 3,000 hours is qualified. once you're qualified, 8, 7, 4, we don't pay attention to that. We want to be sure you're qualified, but it doesn't matter. Now we look for attitude. And it turned out these 3 people had come in, and they were experienced pilots. They were dressed up in kind of pilot uniform type things, and said, we're here for the day, happy to be here to apply for the job. And Southwest Airlines said, we don't really dress like that around here. A lot of us wear shorts, we wear, golf shirts, we're very informal. Would any of you like to change into shorts? And 2 of them said, no, we're very comfortable in our pilot outfits. And the one said, okay, if that's the culture of the company, I'll be more informal. And so he changed into they gave him some shorts to wear. They didn't quite fit right, so they looked kind of funny. And then he's wearing his black shoes and black socks with shorts and wearing maybe his normal shirt. Very strange combination. But he's walking around, doing the interviews and everything. They're saying, that's the guy that is qualified with the attitude. Remember, it says someone who doesn't take oneself too seriously. You see? And so there are indicators. And so Southwest Airlines went to the court. They said, here is why attitude is very important. It's our culture. It's our service to customers. And here is how we measure attitude when we're selecting people. And here is why we hired this guy, not this guy. And the court said, thumbs up. We find in favor of Southwest Airlines they have a systematic way of hiring people that is not discriminatory. That's interesting?
Yeah.
You see, and so as a matter of fact, Southwest Airlines' theory is that if they get the culture right, then the employees will serve the customers right. And so I'm going to do a test here. Let's see if this actually is working. Testing. Okay, so we have we had the situation where the Southwest employees are intended to serve customers well, and so they have an advertisement. They big advertisement, that is intended for customers to see. They say Southwest Airlines is dedicated to giving high levels of customer service, and so we're proud to tell you, the customers, that at Southwest Airlines, you are number 2. And people are going, that's really strange. Customers are number 2. And then underneath it says, the reason that customers are number 2 is because we treat our employees as number 1. And the reason we treat our employees as number 1 is so our employees will treat you, the customer, the same way we treat the employees. Is that interesting? So you see, there's a consistency that goes through the whole thing. The wheels are aligned. Everything is supporting what their objective and their strategy is. Okay, so we went and cast a very broad net. How do we get the right people to apply? But we need to be broad but selective. In other words, we want to get a very broad opportunity for people to apply, but the purpose is to get the best people to apply, not the most people to apply. Okay? So let's talk about some of the ways that we might communicate to a more public setting what it is we're looking for. We can talk about some of these kinds of strategies, which we'll do for the next 45 minutes that we have remaining today. So what about public communication? How do we communicate our expectations, even in our public communication? So let's try this. A spirit of service. Here is Sobeys. This is a grocery store in Canada. And notice that their motto is ready to serve. Now, if you're a customer and you're coming to the store and you see this, how do you feel? You say, I will get very good service here, right? Okay. Now, what about if you're a prospective employee? You're walking along, kind of looking for a job, and it says ready to serve, or you're coming in for an interview, ready to serve. What's the expectation that you have in terms of what the company wants you to do? They want you to be serving the customers, right? So even before I've talked to one person at Sobeys as a potential employee, I have an understanding of what will be expected of me if I join the company. Do you see what I mean? Okay, now here is on the website. This is the Sobeys website. Frank Sobey, the founder, says, The strength of any organization is the people involved. So on the website, it's reinforcing this concept of the importance of the employees. Sobeys' strong belief and long-standing practice of training and promoting employees from within. Notice again, in promoting employees from within, that is what we were just talking about, because they have this strong culture of service. If we bring people from outside, we have to train them from scratch. But if we are growing them from within, we're preparing them throughout their experience in the company. That allows us to have qualified employees available at all times for promotion into positions of greater responsibility. So the fact that they are training and promoting from within gives them a pool of candidates that are available whenever they need the next person for the job. Again, the wheels are aligned. Think about that. The wheels are aligned. And then Sobeys also says, Sobeys Inc. is not only a place to shop, work, and invest, it is a place to grow. So they're talking about how, as an employee, you can expect in this organization to grow and develop so that you will get a return on the talent that you invest in this organization. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So let's take a look at another one. We can also communicate mediocrity in our communications. What's mediocrity? Mama hoo-hoo. Yeah. So here is this is a home for elderly people.
Oh.
Home for elderly people, and so they're having a meeting with their residents, the elderly people, and this is in the minutes, the report that comes out of that meeting. It says, the lodge is still middle of the road as far as rents are concerned. Dorothy, one of the residents, thinks that a lot of people will move out. That's because they've just announced they're going to raise the rates, raise the cost of staying there, the rent. Karen, the lodge director, hopes that living at the location will be so pleasant that residents won't want to leave. In other words, it'll be such a pleasant experience. And then here's Karen's goal is to make most of the residents happy most of the time. Is that a high standard? Low standard? Most of the residents happy most of the time.
High standard.
I'd say low. Let's think about that now. As a resident, how do I feel? How confident am I that I'm going to be happy most of the time? Because only most of the residents will be happy most of the time. And most of the time means that I'm going to be unhappy part of the time. Right? It's actually quite a strange thing to put in there. So let's just say that I'm one of the nurses that I see this. And here's the nurse that is going to be serving the patients or the elderly people that are there. And the nurse says, the goal is most of the residents happy most of the time. So Jessica puts her call light on, and I go and find out what does Jessica want. And Jessica says, I would like to have my bed changed. And I'm thinking, Jessica's a pretty grumpy person here. And it says, I only have to make most of the residents happy most of the time, not Jessica. You see, that standard is actually a very low standard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now I go and I meet Hugh here, and Hugh says, could you bring me some ice? And I'm thinking, Hugh is a nice guy, but let's see, the standard is most of the residents happy most of the time. So I'll keep Hugh happy most of the time, but not today. So do you see how this statement, this is an actual quote from the minute. I didn't make this up. This is an actual quote. This is an actual quote from this company. Is sending a clear message to employees that mediocrity is okay. You see? So here again is how we have to make sure that our wheels are aligned. If our goal is excellent service to our customers, this wheel is out of alignment because it's sending a clear message that a mediocre kind of response is acceptable given what's being said here. You see? So we have to think about, let's think about another one. Here is a restaurant called First Watch. They offer breakfast and brunch and lunch, so they're kind of a breakfasty type place. And they have on their menu this statement. The staff at First Watch promises, this is talking to customers. The staff at First Watch promises to do everything possible to make your visit a moment of relaxation in a busy day. Meeting special needs or requests that you might have gives First Watch a chance to be a special restaurant. Let us know how we can be of service to you, and we promise that we can go that extra mile to make you smile. How's that? Would you like to go have lunch there or breakfast?
Yes.
Sounds like a good place. Would you expect excellent service?
Yes.
And if you are a worker there and you know that this is the expectation on the menu, would it motivate you to give a good service to the customers?
Yes.
So you see, even though this is a message to the customer, it is also setting the expectations for the employees. You see, can you think of any restaurants around here that have that kind of standard of excellent customer service? Did someone say Heidi Lau? Who said Heidi Lau? Okay, Heidi Lau. So Helen, what's an experience in Heidi Lau like?
Their services. If they saw your water glasses, they will give you another close to.
You wipe your glasses?
Yes. So I think they can think that what's your potential needs.
Yeah.
In advance.
So the Heidi Lau employees are trained to be on the lookout for how they can do a little bit extra to serve the customers, right? How many people here have eaten in Heidi Lau before? Only a few. Go have a look. It's just down the street from here, the closest one, near Suning. Okay, so go have an experience sometime. A couple of years ago, my wife and I were here together. My wife came over along with me, and we went down to I told her, we must go to Heidi Lau for you to experience this high level of customer service. And so off we go to Heidi Lau, and it's very crowded. And so they give us the number, and it says 289. So we're saying, how long will this take? Because there's people all over the place. 289. They said about 2.5 hours wait. And so we said, can we go off and come back in 2.5 hours? I said, absolutely, no problem. And so we went off and did some other stuff around Wanda Plaza, which is nearby, and came back. And so we come back 2.5 hours later, and their estimate is very good. We're getting very close to getting to go in. So now it's our number is called. What happens next? We go into the outer waiting area. And what happens in the outer waiting area? They serve you oranges and peanuts and stuff like that, right? Okay. And so who is it that is serving you those oranges and peanuts and things? Do you know? It is the most experienced waiters. The most experienced waiters are doing the things out in the waiting area, and then the other waiters are the ones that are serving the people that are actually having a meal. Why would they put the experienced waiters out front? Because they want your first impression to be a particularly powerful, good impression. And so these guys are out there. Do you need a glasses cleaning thing? Can we bring you some more oranges? And so a very, very high customer service while your final little waiting period. And then you go into the restaurant, and then they will offer you, they will get you organized, help you decide what dishes to order, bring them very nicely. And then in our case, they said, since you had to wait a long time, we brought you a plate of fruits that will be, a thank you for waiting some extra time. And then, so we eat the fruit, and then they said, and now, just as an extra gift, here is some gum for you. So the waiters and waitresses are trained to do the extra stuff that will make you happy. And actually, in the process, it has made Heidi Lau very famous as a place that is a good place to go for high levels of customer service. Now, where do those waiters and waitresses come from? Where does Heidi Lau recruit? Actually, the countryside. Most of the waiters and waitresses are coming from the countryside. And as a matter of fact, one of the benefits, I understand, I'm not sure about this, we need to verify, maybe someone can help me. My understanding is that Heidi Lau helps these employees get their hukou as a result. Helen says no? No? Why not? Are you sure?
Difficult.
And it is difficult, I know,
very difficult.
but I think they help them work on getting a more permanent living status in Shanghai so they don't have to leave so quickly. We can check and find out. Maybe that's something they used to do and don't do anymore. For years, I thought that was something they were doing, but we'll have to do some more research. But anyway, what they're trying to do as a company is find out how can we provide some extra value to our employees, and let's find out if that's right or wrong. I could be wrong. I might be wrong about that. But the point is, they're as a company trying to think about how do we train, how do we develop, but also how do we give these guys a return on the talent they're investing as they come in from the countryside. My guess is that other restaurants would like to hire those Heidi Lau people because they're well trained. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah.
Maybe. We'll see. So as a matter of fact, that may be one way that they can ensure that they have some employment prospects later on. So there's that. Here's another one. Hi. Glad to see you. Excellent service starts here. This is actually a repair place for Hondas. This is a Honda service center. So this is where you drive your Honda in to get it serviced if it needs some repair. So what kind of message is this giving? This is where you drive in. You see, hi, glad to see you. As a customer, does that make you feel good?
Yes.
What does this convey? Looks like they'll serve me fast?
Yes.
Excellent service starts here. I can expect some excellent service. How about if I'm an employee walking in through the door? I see this. What is expected of me as an employee?
Come here. Is it 1 minute?
So I'm expected to be fast, I'm expected to be excellent, and I'm expected to be friendly, right?
Yeah.
And so notice how these are examples of communication with customers that is setting the scene for the behavior of the employees. You know, if I'm a manager here, and my goal is to make sure that my employees are fast, friendly, and excellent, does this help me? Yeah. As a matter of fact, maybe I don't need to do much as a manager to motivate those employees to do that because we've already set the scene. The wheels are in alignment. Okay? Now there's also other things that we can do that are speaking directly to the kinds of employees that we would like to attract into the organization. And so we have job postings, informational brochures, interviews that are all part of the selection process. So let's talk about some recruiting. Where do we go to get people? And QLIC, this is straight out of your textbook, QLIC. We have, we could advertise in newspapers or in other kinds of locations. And notice that she has 4 dimensions: cost, speed, diversity, and efficiency. Some mechanisms are more efficient. Some mechanisms are faster, more diversity, more or lower cost. All of those are there. And so notice that you can kind of make some generalizations about external recruiting and internal recruiting mechanisms. In general, the efficiency of external is low. You need a broader pyramid. You need a lot more applicants. In general, the efficiency of internal recruiting mechanisms is high. You can have fewer applicants because you've already done some selection in their previous jobs. In general, external recruiting gets you more diversity because you're going out and finding new people. Remember the concept of the CEO that brings in new ideas. In general, internal recruiting gets you low diversity because you're hiring people that are already in the organization. You see what I mean? And so, depending on what your objectives are along with the recruiting process, you might select different kinds of things. You can see that campus recruiting is very costly, but it's very good for high levels of diversity and very good for efficiency. But it's very costly. So on the other hand, we could go for the low cost of former employees, giving us, an employee who worked for us for a while, then quit and went somewhere else. Okay? So it's low cost because we already have a connection. Hans used to work for me. He was a great guy, went to another company. Now he'd like to come back. I know he's a great guy. But the diversity is low. He's the same guy, right? Okay? How fast? It's probably slow because when Hans leaves, he'll probably be somewhere else for a couple of years. Okay? How efficient? Very high because I already know him. I'm confident that he's going to be a good person. How about employee referrals? How many companies of yours use employee referrals? Anybody? Employee referrals, lots of them. How does yours work, Jeff?
For the employee referral?
Sorry?
I'm sorry.
If you are doing an employee referral, what's the process?
Yeah. First, like every month, such a frequency for all employees will receive the inter-referral announcement through the company email. And if we have some candidates expect to fit this position, so as us as the employee, we can do the referral and to apply this. And then the system will automatically send a link, hyperlink to our friends. Our friends will upload some resume, and later it will go through the staffing process. Normally, the simple referral is quicker than the hire from outside.
Okay, yeah. And so they're taking advantage of the people that the employees already know as a quick way to get employees in. Do you think the quality of the employee will be high or low coming from employee referrals?
Yes, higher.
Probably higher. The research shows that the fear sometimes is that Alfred will bring his friend in just because he's his friend. But it turns out the reality, sometimes that happens, but more often, Alfred is feeling responsibility to bring in a good friend because his face is partly associated with what this looks like, right? Yeah. And so his reputation in the company is going to be associated with the people that he brings in. So if he brings in Delia, who is a very wonderful employee, then he will have a very good reputation for his judgment. But if he brings in someone who does not have such a good result, then it will reflect poorly on him. And so as a matter of fact, we find that many times employees are very responsible in terms of bringing in good quality people. But look what happens. Let's say I'm the manager and you are my employees. And I say, if you can refer one of your friends or someone that you meet to the company, $500 bonus, or whatever the bonus is, whatever the system is. All of a sudden, I have created 50 human resource managers. Is that interesting? Because all of a sudden, you're all saying, $500 bonus. Next time you're flying to Beijing from here, what do? You talk to the person you're sitting next to and see if they might be a good qualified person, and so maybe by the end of the flight, you've gotten to know them and say, wow, this is a really highly qualified person. How would you like to work for our company? And see if you can recruit them. And so all of a sudden, you've got 50 people doing that. That's very powerful, isn't it? Fantastic. You're on the train, heading to Guangzhou or wherever it is. And you're sitting next to someone and talking. All of a sudden, in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, is this a person that I might be able to recruit? $500. You see? So in this case, that reward might actually be something that is very encouraging. So anyway, you can read more about this in Kulik in the textbook, but this shows you just some of the thinking that is behind that. So here are a few examples of recruiting ads. This is an ad that was put in the window of a Starbucks. Bring your talents to our team. What do you think about that? Is that an effective ad or not so effective? We're looking for baristas probably, right? So, if I'm walking by, I'm a person who's walking by and I might need a job. I'm looking, bring your talents to our team. I'm a talented individual. Maybe I'll come in and apply. And then it says, please come in and ask a store partner for an application. So what does that signal? It doesn't say come in and ask the manager, any store partner you can talk to. So it shows the company is quite confident that they have a good system because I can go in and talk to a barista or I can talk to one of the workers, anybody, and get an application form. I don't need to talk to the manager. It shows something about the team orientation of the company, doesn't it? Yeah. And also, if I'm walking by and I see, bring your talents to our team, well, I'm not a very talented person. I guess I better not apply. You see, as a matter of fact, it might even narrow down some of the applicants that are not qualified because we're communicating two things. We say we want you to be a talented person and we want you to be team-oriented. Okay? So what do you think? Pretty effective as a kind of a first way to get the attention of some people? Let's try another one. Here's Papa John's. And Papa John's, extreme opportunities. Make pizzas, make friends, make money. Join our team today. What do you think? Who are they talking to? Who's their audience? Probably younger people who will be the pizza deliveries or something, right? Okay, is that an effective ad? Is that speaking to those guys? Probably. Okay, let's try one more. Now hiring. Who is that speaking to? Anyone who needs a job, right? Now hiring. But how often do you see a sign like that outside a building or outside? This is what 90% of the companies use, isn't it? So is it possible that if you were more creative and more specific, maybe one of these, you could attract some better people? Okay, so I mean, it's kind of interesting to think about that. This is Sears. It's like a department store in the United States. But it's a department store that's closing down a lot. Even today, they announced they're closing more stores because they're not doing a very good job. I can tell you that when you go into this store, you don't find very good employees. Okay, because they don't have a very strong, they've got 1.0 managers and 1.0 systems there, and it tells. As a matter of fact, this is a pretty good place to buy appliances like washing machines or refrigerators and things like that because they have a very good selection. So when my wife and I are looking for those kinds of things, we may go to Sears. But we go there and we say to ourselves before we get there, we may or may not find someone who knows much about these things because we have to do our own research and preparation. And so we go there in spite of the fact that we will not find a very qualified person. Whereas there are other places that we go where we say, if we need to really get an expert to help us with something, we will go over here. And so you see how the customers begin to be affected by this. I'll tell you an interesting thing here on the now hiring. One of my students actually worked as a department manager at Sears. And he told me they were so desperate for employees at one point that the manager had one employee go stand at the door. And as each customer came in, he said, "Do you need a job?" How does that communicate to the customers something about this company? So Olivia's coming in to look for a refrigerator, and the first greeting is, "Do you need a job?" And Olivia says, "No, and maybe I'll go over to this other place to get my refrigerator," right? You see? So the image, you notice how it interacts. If I see this sign, what kind of employees am I expecting to find in here if I'm a customer? People who needed jobs. How about if I see this sign as I'm walking by Starbucks? What kind of employees do I expect to see in Starbucks?
People have talent.
Maybe talented, team-oriented people. You see, notice again how the wheels need to be in alignment. Because actually, in many cases, we're talking to more than one audience. This was intended to talk to employees, but this actually also talks to customers. This is the entrance to the store. Every customer will see that sign. So we began thinking strategically about how we can have a consistent message with the wheels aligned so that we're accomplishing what we want to accomplish with our multiple audiences. I'll let you have a look, because we're getting a little short on time, I'll let you have a look at these couple of slides on onboarding. There's some thoughts about effective onboarding, how you bring people in, but I want to give you some examples. Here's a very bad example that you can look at in your spare. In fact, I'll read it. This was recalling people after they'd been laid off for 6 years at Chrysler, when I worked at Chrysler. And Armando Smith was the employment supervisor. And here's what he said. 2, with the name of the person, your seniority date is now eligible for recall. Report to work at the East Entry Gate at 7 a.m. on June 4th, 1984. If you do not appear at that time, you will forfeit your right to recall Armando Smith. What do you think? Nice, warm welcome coming back after being laid off for 6 years? No? But so again, if you want to kind of set the scene where your employees are going to feel like they're engaged and part of the workforce, this is totally out of alignment, isn't it? This wheel is wrong. And so we need to be sure that we're looking at the behavior of all of our employees, including this employment supervisor. We probably want to say something like, to so-and-so, good news. The plant, the conditions in the economy have turned around. We're reopening this plant, and we welcome you back to our family. That would sound better, wouldn't it? Okay. So here's how another company does it. This is David Wheatley, the guy that I had a quote for you from earlier. Every time they hire a new employee anywhere in the United States, they fly them to Houston for onboarding training. And they play games with them, Jeopardy and Lego, that are redesigned to give information about the company. So they're learning about the company by playing these games. And then they introduce them to the language of the company. A performance evaluation is not called a performance evaluation, it's called a growth review. They talk about why that is. Why is the language different that we're using here? They have a video skit where the CEO is wearing a superhero costume and giving the history of the company, kind of showing a spirit of fun and engagement in the company. And they say after you've been with us for 1 year, you can have 10% off the price of a new home. Not a bad perk. That could be very valuable. And so that's an example. David Wheatley by the numbers. They are growing quickly, but they have very little voluntary turnover, only 11% turnover. They had 10,000, almost 11,000 applications in the past year, and that made them have 60 applicants per opening. Are they an employer of choice?
Yes.
Absolutely. You see, they have figured out how to become an employer of choice. 40% of hires are by the employee referrals we were just talking about. They have created a company-wide HR system where every employee is part of the HR system. So here's an onboarding checklist, starting with a warm welcome and going on down. I'll let you can look at that in more detail. And let's look at a few examples, maybe some induction training. So here's Honda. Honda in the United States, one of the plants that I visited and studied very closely. And here outside, they have lots and lots of trees. And in fact, even room for more trees. And then you find out that if you look closely, every tree has a tag on it. And every tree has the name of an employee and the employment number, the date the tree was planted, and the date the employee was hired. The tree has been planted in honor of the employee. And so the plant manager comes out with 20 new employees, and they say, here's our tree planting ceremony. We will plant a tree in the name of each of our employees. And they say the significance of this tree is that we expect you to grow and develop as an employee of the company, even as your tree grows and develops outside the plant. Isn't that a nice way to welcome people to the plant?
Yes.
You see? So does that give you a nice sense of connection right from the very beginning? Here's another one, Disney. You know, Disney, of course, Disney has just opened up a park here in Shanghai. How many people have visited Shanghai Disneyland? Anybody? Quite a few people. I visited last year to have a look. But Disney is very famous for their excellent human resource management practices. And I was trying to learn when I went out about their human resource management practices, but I was there too short a time. So I just observed and saw some stuff. But here is a sign pointing towards wardrobe and auditions. Those are metaphors for them. The wardrobe is the uniform that people are wearing. Now, wardrobe is usually for the actors and actresses and movies and things like that. But they say, as a matter of fact, you're part of our performance. As an employee, you're part of our performance. And auditions are what they call interviews. Audition means you're trying out for a role in a movie, right? They say, we're doing an audition because you're trying out for a role in our company. And then they call their employees their cast members, as if they're members of a performance, members of a play, or members of a movie. Cast members, and they say there are two kinds of cast members. They're on stage and off stage. On stage and off stage cast members. And what do you think the difference is? Who is on stage? Is the CEO, what?
The real performers.
The real performers are sort of on stage. because it depends on if they're interacting with the customers. If they're way over removed and on stage, they performing, then they're off stage. But if they're interacting with the customers, they're on stage. So the CEO, on stage or off stage? Usually off stage, because the CEO is off in an office somewhere managing the company. If they come to the park and interact with the customers, then they're on stage. How about the ticket taker? On stage. So isn't it interesting? On stage usually means very important, right? And so it's surprising that the CEO is usually off stage, but the ticket taker is always on stage. Okay? So that they're trying to help people understand that through the training and the development and the onboarding. And I'll give you an example of how this works. It's very interesting. My dad, I think I told you, is a professor of education, now retired. But one time he was down in Florida, close to Disney World, visiting one of his former students, who is now a professor in Florida. And his former student had a 16-year-old daughter, and they were all having dinner together, the family and my dad. And his student said, you know, can you believe Disneyland? He said, my daughter just got a summer job at Disneyland, just for the summer. 16-year-old, young high school student, got a job at Disneyland. And they gave her 2 weeks of training just to be a ticket taker. 2 weeks of training to be a ticket taker. What do you think about that? Pretty good, huh? And then the daughter says, this is the interesting part. The daughter says, but Dad, I'm not just a ticket taker. I'm the first person the customer meets when they arrive at the park. How I am friendly and greet the customer and take their ticket and show them how to get to the first ride sets the scene for their whole experience at the park. That's a 16-year-old ticket taker speaking. Did they get their money's worth out of their training?
Yes.
So you see, it's possible through the onboarding, through the training process, to really set the scene to help these people understand what is the culture, what is the role, and that you're on stage. The physical job, the technical job of ticket taking might require 5 minutes of training. When the person comes, take the ticket and put it here. Now you're qualified to be a ticket taker. But you see, Disney has redefined the concept of ticket taking so that it's now a customer service agent, basically. You see, and they didn't need to hire a highly qualified, 10 years experienced customer service agent. All they had to do is explain the concept to this 16-year-old girl, and now she is ready to serve the customers in a very wonderful way and give them a very warm welcome and a warm feeling about their start to their experience at Disney. Is that interesting? Go to, if you haven't been to Disney, go and see what the experience is like. You'll find it's quite some friendly people out there, I think you'll find. Here's another interesting one. This is a guy that I met. This is actually in the Daniels College of Business. This is my College of Business at the University of Denver. And I was actually running out to give a talk at this place. And my topic was managing employee excellence. And so I happened to notice as I was running by on my way to drive out to the mountains where I was giving this talk, I noticed this guy had something on his arm. It said, Otis, #1 in safety. And so I thought, let me just talk to this guy, because that's sort of what I'm talking about here. And so I said, what's this patch? I was coming out of the elevator here, and this is Otis, the elevator guy. I said, what's this patch on your arm? What does that mean, #1 in safety? And he starts telling me, we take safety very seriously. We've been trained in this and that, and we do this and that, and here are our And so 10 minutes goes by, and I'm thinking I'm going to be late to the thing. I've got to get out of here. But he's telling me all this stuff about safety, and I'm thinking, wow, he really believes all this stuff. It's not just a patch on his arm. It's something that he's been trained and believes and practices every day, and that's good news for us because we ride in his elevators all the time, right? And so now it could have been that when I asked him about this, he would say, #1 in safety, that's just a little slogan that we have at Otis. We put it on our shoulders so that the customer feels good about safety. No, he believes this. He practices it. It's what he lives and breathes while he's at work. He's like the 16-year-old ticket taker who sees a role in what he's doing. So I said, okay, can I take your picture so I can put you in my presentation that I'm going off to do? And so here he still is. So, and then of course, here's another guy. What's he doing? He is at a this is Canadian, kind of like home, home B&Q. You know the B&Q, kind of a home place, home service. Anyway, it's a department store for home goods, like IKEA almost. IKEA. Anyway, what's unusual about him? He's wearing rollerblades. He's one of the clerks. He's wearing rollerblades. He's got a helmet there. So I stopped him and asked him what he was doing. He says, "Oh, I'm here to serve the customers as quickly as possible." And so if I didn't need any help, but if I needed help, I could say, "Where are your screwdrivers or whatever it is?" And he'll say, "I'll go get you one." Here you go. And so notice that they have come up with a system where he told me this is a very fun job for him because he gets to roller skate all day long. The company gets a very good deal because he's working very hard, and the customer gets a very good deal because they get very fast service. So you see how it all fits. The wheels are aligned. Okay? So let's go to the Sonnenalp. This is a very luxury hotel up in the mountains outside of Denver in the Rocky Mountains. And quite expensive place to stay. In fact, we would not stay there except this is where the conference was, so we had to stay there, luckily. And so we arrive, and you would expect good service at a high luxury place, right? And so we go in, we check in, and we get our room. They're very, very nice check-in service, and we go to our room, my wife and I. And we find that they only gave us one card, which is not a mistake. It's just that I didn't ask for two cards. I said, "Oh, go back and get another card." So 15 minutes later, I'm back at the desk, and I'm asking, could we get a second card? "Oh, Mr. Allen, happy to give you another card. He remembers my name from 15 minutes before." I'm going, wow, that's pretty interesting. But I was thinking, 15 minutes, and maybe he didn't have a lot of other people check in during that time. And he gives me the second card very nicely, back to the room. Maybe 2 hours later, it's time for dinner, so my wife and I are walking down the hall going to where the restaurant is, and we see the same guy again. "Mr. and Mrs. Allen, how's your stay going so far?" He still remembers our names. This is 2 hours later. So we're thinking, wow, this is pretty amazing stuff. And so we go have a very nice dinner, and then the next day is the conference. And so the conference is going all day long. My talk is about 11 o'clock in the morning. So I'm just before my talk, I'm just outside the conference room, and I'm making some final notes and doing the stuff that Southwest Airlines doesn't want me to do. And so getting ready for my talk, and I needed some paper to make a couple of notes. And so I called, there was a maid walking by, one of the maids was walking by, and so I called her over. I said, "Is it possible to get some paper here?" And she said, "Oh, absolutely, no problem." And so she goes off, and I would say less than 5 minutes later, 3 different people bring me paper. And I mean, they bring me paper. I still have some paper years later from this experience because they brought me so much paper. And so I'm thinking, oh, this is amazing. Everywhere I go, these people are so friendly and so helpful. I thought, actually, this would be pretty interesting. Maybe they have a mission statement here that I could put in my presentation. I still have about 5 minutes before my presentation starts. Maybe I can stick in this, and this becomes a fun example. All the people at the conference know they're here, they're experiencing this. Maybe the mission statement can help explain. So I asked the maid, "Do you have a mission statement here at the Sonnenalp?" Now, do you expect the maid will know the answer to that? The maid says, "Yes, I have it in my pocket." And she pulls out a card that is the mission statement. She says, "We're all required, every employee at the Sonnenalp is required to keep this mission statement in our pocket at all times." I had no idea. I was just asking to see what I could find out. So I said, "Could I get a copy of that card?" She goes, "No problem." And she goes off and makes a photocopy and brings me back the photocopy of the card. So I quickly, first of all, oops, what happened here? Let's see. That's strange. to try controlling down here. How about this thing here? Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. So anyway, she goes off, makes the photocopy, and then I'm thinking, wow, now I have the material I need for my talk, and I'm now ready to go to my talk. But I asked her, this is the maid, I'm still talking to the maid, I asked her, is there a human resource manager or someone I could talk to learn more about the human resource management systems? Because now I'm just fascinated to find out, how do they have such a system that a maid will be doing all of this? And she says, sure, Johannes would be happy to meet with you. I said, well, so who's Johannes? She says, that's the owner of the Son and Alp Hotel. So here you have a maid who is committing the owner of the hotel to meet with this crazy person that's asking for paper and asking about mission statements. And I said, well, how could I meet this guy? And she says, when would you like to meet him? I said, well, I'm talking in my talk from 11 to 12. I'll be finished at 12. Anytime afternoon would be wonderful. Or I can come back another time. I'll drive back to the mountains and meet this guy to do some research, to learn a new story that I can tell a class sometime. And so I'm finished with my talk and I'm coming out, and here's the maid waiting for me. And she says, I went and talked to Johannes, he'll meet you at 1:30. And so I thought, whoa, that's pretty amazing. So I stayed, and my wife and I had lunch, then we went off to meet Johannes. And the interesting first thing we found out was he was a University of Denver graduate. So that was very good. But then we started talking about his philosophy of managing, and he had started this hotel from scratch several years before. His family was from Germany. He's a German guy. His family was from Germany, and they had hotels in Germany, and they sent him to the United States to be the family pioneer to see if they could do some business in the United States, and he started up the Son and Alp Hotel, which was a very, very successful hotel in Vail, Colorado. So I was learning about the history, and then I said, so how do you use this mission statement that you have? And he says, we use it as our training. Every week or every month, we get in small groups, every employee goes through some training and discussion about this mission statement. We discuss maybe one part of it, and we talk about what does it mean for your job? How do you interact with customers as a result of that? So it's a very, very detailed process. He says we require every employee to carry it with them at all times so they remember it, it's on their mind. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to test this guy. So I said, so do you have it in your pocket right now? Because it's one thing to require all the employees. It's another for the manager to be the example, right? He says, no, I don't, because I have it memorized. And he recited it to me. And here is the mission statement. See if you don't think this is an interesting mission statement. And remember, this is what is communicated with the maids as well as the senior managers. We are a dynamic, responsible, caring family working with pride and commitment to be the standard of excellence of our community. We are a well-trained and motivated team consistently and efficiently providing the ultimate and personalized service to our guests within an environment of warmth and elegance. Would you like to stay there?
Yeah.
Would you like to have a maid that believed that? Isn't that amazing? And to think that now, you see now, when you're doing the training, maybe you don't read every time, maybe you don't read the whole thing. Maybe you say, let's study this line right here today. We are a dynamic, responsible, caring family working with pride and commitment. Can we just stop there? What does that mean to you, Jackie? Or what does that mean to you, Susan? And we get some discussion going with the maids. It could be the waiters and waitresses. It could be the sales manager. There's a discussion going. And we begin really getting this to the point that it's in everybody's mind as part of their way of life. See, now, isn't that powerful? You see, how easy is Johannes's job as the owner and manager, the CEO of that company, if every single employee not only understands this, but commits to put this into their daily work? This becomes you can say, a corporate remote control. That's the culture. If you have a very strong culture, you have a corporate remote control, because now I'm relying on Rose not to follow all of my rules and my instructions. I'm relying on Rose to use her good judgment as she puts these principles into action. And Rose might be my sales manager, my vice president, or my maid. It doesn't matter. Everybody in the organization knows these principles, and they will use these principles as their guide, so that when a strange person is sitting outside a hall and asks for some paper, there's no need to go ask for permission. There's no need to do anything else. You use your good judgment to apply these principles. You see? That becomes the corporate remote control that is so powerful. And then, all of a sudden, your job as a leader or manager becomes easier because you invested. See, now, Johannes is working very, very hard. But he's working very, very hard to invest up front in the behavior of his employees later on, as opposed to ordering them around and watching them closely on a day-to-day basis. On the back of the card, there's an interesting thing. They call it the Sonnenalp Smile. The Sonnenalp Smile, S-M-I-L-E. Small is beautiful, memorable, integrity, leadership, and excellence. Then they have a little explanation again that helps people understand each of those. This is another part of their remote control. You know, if we understand that Sonnenalp is dedicated to warmth, intimacy, and attention to detail. This week in our training, let's talk about that. What does that mean? As a maid, how do you work with the customers to make sure that this is achieved? Memorable, integrity. You can go down the list. You see, this is designed in such a way that the new employee, part of the onboarding is to begin understanding this. Long-term employees, continuing to reflect and perfect over time. My guess is that it may not be the same, and it might not be anything like this, and it may be a different system, but my guess is Heidi Lau uses something like this, so that their employees are operating with corporate remote control also. They are not so closely supervised on a minute-by-minute basis, but they're relying on the training and the spirit and the principles that they've enjoined in order to do that. So that is the end of our class for today. I hope that you found it useful for both from the standpoint of specifics, but also to get a feel for what we're talking about as we talk about human resource management for non-HR managers. Tomorrow, we will be talking, we'll talk about the case, the frog design case, so be sure to prepare that tonight and turn it in to Patrick first thing tomorrow morning. And then we will discuss the case, talk a little bit more. We'll talk a little bit more about who millennials are tomorrow also. How do we manage millennials and what are their expectations, and a little bit about interviewing. And then in the afternoon, we'll talk about performance evaluation, both formal and informal. In the beginning of that, we'll talk about formal performance evaluation systems that you may have in your companies. And then we'll also talk about an informal system that my father and I have developed called 2+2, RGR. So have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early, ready to go again.
Yeah. She's over